All right, because of Winn-Dixie, chapter 12. Me and Winn-Dixie got to Gertrude's Pets so early for my first day of work that the closed sign was still in the window. But when I pushed on the door, it swung open, and so we went inside. I was about to call out to Otis that we were there, but then I heard music. It was the prettiest music I'd ever heard in my life. I looked around to see where it was coming from, and that's when I noticed that all of the animals were out of their cages. There were rabbits and hamsters and gerbils and mice and birds and lizards and snakes. And they were all just sitting there on the floor like they had turned to stone. And Otis was standing in the middle of them. He was playing guitar, and he had on skinny, pointed-toe cowboy boots that he was tapping while he was playing the music. His eyes were closed and he was smiling. Winn-Dixie got a dreamy kind of look in his face. He smiled really hard at Otis, and then he sneezed, and then all his whiskers went all fuzzy. And then he sighed and kind of drooped to the floor with all the other animals. Just then, Gertrude caught sight of Winn-Dixie. "Dog!" she croaked, and flew over and landed on his head. Otis looked up at me. He stopped playing his guitar, and the spell was broken. The rabbit started hopping, and the bird started flying, and the lizard started leaping, and the snake started slithering, and Winn-Dixie started barking and chasing everything that was moving, and Otis shouted, "Help me!" For what seemed like a long time, me and Otis ran around trying to catch mice and gerbils and hamsters and snakes and lizards. We kept on bumping into each other and tripping over the animals, and Gertrude kept screaming, "Dog! Dog!" Every time I caught something, I put it back in the first cage I saw. I didn't care if it was the right cage or not. I just put it in and slammed the door. And the whole time I was chasing things, I was thinking that Otis must be some kind of a snake charmer, the way he could play his guitar and make all the animals turn to stone. And then I thought, "This is silly," I shouted over, Winn-Dixie barking and Gertrude yelling. I said, "Play some more music, Otis." He looked at me for a minute, then he started playing his guitar, and in just a few seconds, everything was quiet. Winn-Dixie was lying on the floor, blinking his eyes and smiling to himself, and sneezing every now and then. And the mice and the gerbils and the rabbits and the lizards and the snakes that we hadn't caught yet got quiet and sat still. And I picked them up one by one and put them back in their cages. When I was all done, Otis stopped playing. He looked down at his boots. "I was just playing them some music. Makes them happy." "Yes, sir," I said. "Did they escape from their cages?" "No," Otis said. "I take them out. I feel sorry for them being locked up all the time. I know what it's like, being locked up." "You do?" I said. "I have been in jail," Otis said. He looked at me real quick and then looked back down at his boots. "You have?" I said. "Never mind," said Otis. "Aren't you here to sweep the floor?" "Yes, sir," I told him. He walked over to the counter and started digging through a pile of things, and finally he came up with a broom. "Here," he said, "you should start sweeping." Only, he must have gotten confused. He was holding out his guitar for me instead of a broom. "With your guitar?" I asked. He blushed and handed me the broom, and I started to work. I am a good sweeper. I swept the whole store and then dusted some of the shelves. The whole time I worked, Winn-Dixie followed me, and Gertrude followed him, flying behind him and sitting on his head and his back and croaking real quiet to herself. "Dog, dog." When I was done, Otis thanked me. I left Gertrude's Pets thinking about how the preacher probably wouldn't like it very much that I was working for a criminal. Sweetie Pie Thomas was waiting for me right out front. "I seen that," she said. She stood there and sucked her knuckle and stared at me. "Seen what?" I said. "I seen all them animals out of their cages and keeping real still. Is that man magic?" she said. "Kind of," I told her. She hugged Winn-Dixie around the neck. "Just like this grocery store dog, right?" "Right," I said. I started walking, and Sweetie Pie took her knuckle out of her mouth and put her hand in mine. "Are you coming to my birthday party?" she asked. "I surely am," I told her. "The theme is pink," she said. "I know it," I told her. "I gotta go," she said all of a sudden. "I gotta go home and tell my mama about what I seen. I live right down there in that yellow house. That's my mama on the porch. You see her? She's waving at you." I waved at the woman on the porch, and she waved back, and I watched Sweetie Pie run off to tell her mom about Otis being a magic man. It made me think about my mama and how I wanted to tell her the story about Otis charming all the animals. I was collecting stories for her. I would also tell her about Miss Franny and the bear, and about meeting Gloria Dump and believing for just a minute that she was a witch. I had a feeling that these were the kind of stories Mama would like. The kind that would make her laugh out loud, the way the preacher said she liked to laugh. Chapter 13. Me and Winn-Dixie got into a daily routine where we would leave the trailer early in the morning, get down to Gertrude's Pets in time to hear Otis play his guitar for the animals. Sometimes Sweetie Pie snuck in for the concert too. She sat on the floor and wrapped her arms around Winn-Dixie and rocked back and forth like he was a big old teddy bear. And then when the music was over, she would walk around trying to pick out which pet she wanted. But she always gave up and went home because the only thing she really wanted was a dog like Winn-Dixie. After she was gone, I would sweep and clean up and even arrange some of Otis's shelves because he did not have an eye for arranging things, and I did. And when I was done, Otis would write down my time in a notebook that he marked on the outside. 1 red leather collar, 1 red leather leash. And the whole time, he did not in any way ever act like a criminal. After working at Gertrude's Pets, me and Winn-Dixie would go over to the Herman W. Block Memorial Library and talk to Miss Franny and listen to her tell us a story. But my favorite place to be that summer was in Gloria Dump's yard. And I figured it was Winn-Dixie's favorite place to be too, because when we got up to the last block before her house, Winn-Dixie would break away from my bike and start to run for all he was worth, heading for Gloria Dump's backyard and his spoonful of peanut butter. Sometimes Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry would follow me. They would holler, "There goes preacher's daughter visiting the witch." "She's not a witch," I told them. It made me mad the way they wouldn't listen to me and kept on believing whatever they wanted to believe about Gloria Dump. One time Stevie said to me, "My mama says you shouldn't be spending all your time cooped up in that pet shop and at that library sitting around talking with old ladies. She says you should get out in the fresh air and play with kids your own age. That's what my mama says." "Oh, lay off her," Dunlap said to Stevie. Then he turned to me. "He don't mean it," he said. But I was already mad. I shouted at Stevie. I said, "I don't care what your mama says. She's not my mama, and she can't tell me what to do." "I'm going to tell my mama you said that," shouted Stevie. "And she'll tell your daddy, and he'll shame you in front of the whole church. And that pet shop man is retarded, and he was in jail, and I wonder if your daddy knows that." "Otis is not retarded," I said, "and my daddy knows that he was in jail." That was a lie, but I didn't care. "And you go ahead and tell on me if you want, you big bald-headed baby." I swear, it about wore me out yelling at Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry every day. By the time I got to Gloria Dump's yard, I felt like a soldier who had been fighting in a hard battle. Gloria would make me a peanut butter sandwich straight off, and then she would pour me a cup of coffee with half coffee and half milk, and that would refresh me. "Why don't you play with them boys?" Gloria asked me. "Because they're ignorant," I told her. "They still think you're a witch. It doesn't matter how many times I tell them you're not." "I think they're just trying to make friends with you in a roundabout way," Gloria said. "I don't want to be their friend," I said. "It might be fun having them 2 boys for friends." "I'd rather talk to you," I said. "They're stupid and mean, and they're boys." Gloria would shake her head and sigh, and then she would ask me what was going on in the world. And did I have any stories to tell her? And I always did. Chapter 14. Sometimes I told Gloria the story Miss Franny Block had just told me. Or I imitated Otis tapping his pointy-toed boots and playing for all the animals, and that always made her laugh. And sometimes I made up a story, and Gloria Dump would listen to it all the way through from beginning to end. She told me she used to love to read stories, but she couldn't anymore because her eyes were so bad. Can't you get some really strong glasses? I asked her. Child, she said, they don't make glasses strong enough for these eyes. One day, when the storytelling was done, I decided to tell Gloria that Otis was a criminal. I thought maybe I should tell an adult about it, and Gloria was the best adult I knew. Gloria, I said. She said back. You know Otis? I don't know him, but I know what you tell me about him. Well, he's a criminal. He's been in jail. Do you think I should be afraid of him? What for? I don't know. For doing bad things, I guess? For being in jail? Child, Gloria said, let me show you something. She got up out of her chair real slow and took hold of my arm. Let's the two of us walk all the way back to the back of this yard. Okay, I said. We walked, and Winn-Dixie followed right behind us. It was a huge yard, and I had never been all the way back in it. When we got to a big old tree, we stopped. Look at this tree, Gloria said. I looked up. There were bottles hanging from just about every branch. There were whiskey bottles and beer bottles and wine bottles, all tied with string, and some of them were clanking against each other and making a spooky kind of noise. Me and Winn-Dixie stood and stared at the tree, and the hair on the top of his head rose up a little bit, and he growled deep in his throat. Gloria Dump pointed her cane at the tree. What do you think about this tree? I said, I don't know. Why are all those bottles on it? To keep the ghosts away, Gloria said. What ghost? The ghost of all the things I done wrong. I looked at all the bottles on the tree. You did that many things wrong? I asked her. Gloria said Miss Gloria. More than that. But you're the nicest person I know, I told her. Don't mean I hadn't done bad things, she said. There are whiskey bottles on there, I told her, and beer bottles. Child, said Gloria Dump, I know that. I'm the one that put them there. I'm the one who drank what was in them. My mama drank, I whispered. I know it, Gloria Dump said. The preacher says she sometimes couldn't stop drinking. Miss Gloria said again. That's the way it is for some folks. We get started and we can't get stopped. Are you one of those people? Yes, ma'am, I am. But these days, I don't drink nothing stronger than coffee. Did the whiskey and the beer and the wine, did they make you do the bad things that are now ghosts? Some of them, said Gloria Dump. Some of them I would have done anyway, with alcohol or without it, before I learned. Learned what? Learned what the most important thing. What's that? I asked her. It's different for everyone, she said. You find out on your own. But in the meantime, you got to remember you can't always judge people by the things they've done. You got to judge them by what they're doing now. You judge Otis by the pretty music he plays and how he is to them animals, because that's all you know about him right now. All right? Yes, ma'am, I said. And them Dewberry boys, try not to judge them too harsh either. All right? All right, I said. All right then, said Gloria Dump, and she turned and started walking away. When Dixie nudged me with his wet nose and wagged his tail. When he saw I wasn't going, he trotted after Gloria. I stayed where I was and I studied the tree. I wondered if my mama, wherever she was, had a tree full of bottles. and I wondered if I was a ghost to her, the same way she sometimes seemed like a ghost to me. That's it.